I consider one of my biggest accomplishments the fact that I overcame a very abusive childhood. They make documentaries about the way I grew up. I was abused every way you can name. I was neglected. I was given adult responsibility when I was just, 4, 5, 6 years old. My mother was married 9 times. I lived with 4 of them. They were all abusive alcoholics. And even when I was little, I remember thinking, this is going to end with me. Now, I wouldn't have phrased it that way, but even at that early age, I said, this is not going to happen going forward when I'm a father. My father left when I was 4. I never ever saw him again. I have a younger sister that's 2 years younger than me. We have the same father, and then I had a half sister, and she was born when I was 6. And I learned how to change diapers because I got tired of that baby crying. I was 6 years old. And the reason she was crying is she wasn't being tended to. She wasn't being fed properly. Her diapers weren't being taken care of. She wasn't being loved. And when I learned those things, that became my responsibility. I woke up one morning and she was to her crying. And that happened a lot, and that was kind of an alarm to me. So when I woke up, I went into where she was at, and he was standing over her, thumping her in the head, telling her to shut up. She was not a year old. And he had dropped her on her head, and she was crying, and he was thumping her in the head to say, stop it, stop it. That was his way of dealing with a wounded child. Those were normal occurrences in our life. My mother's third husband was the most abusive of all physically. He would send me after a 1/2-inch wrench, and if I came back with a 9/16, he'd hit me with it. He'd give me to the count of 10 to go hide, and took an air gun and started shooting at me at 10. That baby that I just mentioned, she died at 18 months old. But I remember the day they came and got me out of school and told me that my sister had passed away because she'd been sick and in the hospital. And on the way home from the funeral, my mother threw her arm over the back of the chair, back of the seat of the car, and looked at me back in that seat and said, if it wasn't for you, she'd still be alive. And I mean, this was my life. This is what we lived through. There was no love. There was no reassurance. I was locked in a closet when I was 2 years old, 3 tops. The reason I remember the age is because my younger sister was an infant, and my mother had her in her arms. And I don't know how she secured the door, but I was scared of the dark because I was 25 years old. When my last sister was born, I was 8. My mother brought her home and handed her to me and said, here's your sister, take care of her. We didn't have a crib, we didn't have anything to take care of a baby with. And at 8 years old, I had the presence of mind to push my bed against the wall. Now I'm an adult, and I know that's not the best thing, but I was making lemonade, okay? And I'd been given lemons, and I was making lemonade, so I pushed her bed up the wall. My thinking was, at 8 years old, I said, okay, if she cries, she'll be right in my ear. I'll hear her. I'll check her pants. If she still keeps crying, I'll check her. I'll get her a bottle. If she still keeps crying, I'll give her some aspirin. If she still keeps crying, I got to ask for help. I had to ask for help twice and was treated like an idiot for doing that. But I took care of that baby. She was my baby. When I was home, that was I didn't get to play. I got to take care of the baby. But when I was I was 18, 19 years old, my freshman year in college, somebody knocked on my door and invited me to a Bible study. And I didn't care a thing about a Bible study, but I was lonely. And I knew there'd be people there, and I thought, well, I'll get to meet somebody. So I went. I was real easy to work with. The man that ran the student that actually ran the Bible study, he took an interest in me. We'd go out and eat. He'd share the gospel with me. And I wasn't ready to make any of those type changes, but he sowed seed. And over the next 12 months, my life began to just fall apart. And I started figuring out that I needed to make some changes. And first thing I did was stop drinking. And I did that for about 2 weeks, and then I went out with the guys one Saturday night and actually spent the night at a friend's house. Woke up the next morning, my eyes popped open at 8 o'clock, and the first thing that hit my brain cells was, I'm going to go to church today. And I don't know why that happened. I do know why, but I don't know. I didn't have that plan when I went to bed, but I woke up. I went to a little country church and listened intently, but I wasn't ready that day. And I went back the next day, and I was anxious to get there, and I wanted to hear what the man had to say. And at the end of that message, he offered an invitation, and I gave everything I knew of myself to everything I understood about God that day. And that for me was the beginning of the opportunity or the possibility to turn that dysfunction that I'd grown up around. Okay, that was where it all began. Now, I had for a lot of people that would be the end of the story. For me, it was just the beginning, because I went out that very afternoon and was playing a pickup game of football and threw an interception, and the first thing out of my mouth was the Lord's name in vain. Now, why did I do that? Because that was my default. It's what I'd done the day before that, the day before that, the day before that, the day before that. But something was different that day because I heard it. I had a conscience. I was pricked. It bothered me, and I did exactly what I should have done. I looked up in the sky and said, God, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that. But you know, there's a lot of people out there. There's people out there, not just a few. Let's word it that way. They would have told you that I wasn't saved that day. Well, I punched my ticket. I was on my way to heaven, but I had a lot of abuse and a lot of things to work through. I was like 18 or 19 then, and I had my first child when I was 41, and there was a lot of changes went on with me in those 20 plus years. For a lot of people, I've heard a lot of testimonies where that would be the end of it. Now life is wonderful. Well, let me tell you something. You don't go through what I went through in my childhood, and life be wonderful. I brought a lot of baggage into that situation. But I was on a course now where I could find real solutions, where I could find out who I was and who loved me, and I realized that I could be loved, and that was the beginning of a journey that I went through, because for the next 15 years I was the epitome of a double-minded man. And that was largely because of what I'd been through growing up. I was so mad at God. Why was I mad at God? I was mad at God because when things didn't go right, I thought He'd abandoned me. And part of that is because I'd been misled. I'd heard those stories where now I'm saved and everything's great. Well, everything wasn't great for me. I had so much inner conflict and so many things that I needed to get sorted out. But you know what? I knew the answers were in God's Word. I knew the answers were with God. I knew that Jesus had made it possible for me to be restored and put back in the situation that I was created to be in anyway. That's why I longed to be there to start with. But now I just had to figure out how all that worked and how all that impacted me. So when I was 41, I had my first child. And for me, that was the beginning of understanding God and how He loved me. I went from being so much, when I first got saved, I thought Christianity was just a bunch of do's and don'ts. Well, now I realize that God gave me the power to choose, and the choices I made, He gave me that power to choose, because when I choose to be obedient, that makes my obedience valuable. And I didn't understand that till I had my own children, and they were doing things because they wanted to be obedient to me, and I appreciated it so much. So the victory for me came when I started realizing that it wasn't about do's and don'ts. It was about, now I make decisions and choices because I appreciate so much what God has done for me. You know, He brought me to a point where I could handle the anger. He brought me to a point where I could understand how He worked. He brought me to a point where I knew that I was His. And that may sound like that's as honest as I know how to be. Once I got to that point, I quit worrying about what somebody else thought about me or what somebody else felt about me. I quit worrying about making somebody else happy, because I knew how to act now. I knew that God loved me. And I acted out of appreciation, not out of fear, not out of getting caught, I could be real. That for me was the victory. And when I got to that point, I could do, a friend of mine told me years ago that my biggest struggle would end up being my biggest opportunity for victory. Well, I'm a great dad. And that may sound boastful. I say that because I got great kids, and I got great relationships with my great kids. They've been in my ministry field. They both know Jesus. And they both love Him, and they both are self-governing. They both make decisions because they want to please Him and they want to please their parents. They're respectful. I don't have to badger them or beat them or anything like that. And when I saw that happening with them, it helped me understand how I should be responding to God, because if I love them like that, it's not even close to how He loves me, even though I didn't understand it. That was the beginning of me having a chance to understand it. One of the biggest changes, and it's obviously a victory, was when I quit being mad at God. And you know when I quit being mad at God? When I decided to quit being mad at God. See, God never changed. He was always there. But my perception of how He worked in my life and my perception of what He was supposed to do for me was tainted, for one thing. And it wasn't accurate. And because of that, because I couldn't make Him do what I wanted Him to do, I was mad at Him. But see, He was always there. He was always doing great. I was the one with the problem. And when I figured out what the problem was, me, then, and it's only been like 3 or 4 years that I've quit being, and I decided to quit being mad at God, and I'm not mad at Him anymore, at all. I won't even entertain that thought. If it comes into my brain, I capture it and say, nope. If there's a problem here, it's me. God's doing what He's supposed to be doing. I need to adjust. I need to act and not react. And for me, that's been one of the most life-changing things, and it's a theme in my book. It's something that I talk about throughout the book, about accepting responsibility for yourself and deciding. One of the things that I overcame, you can't go through, and I don't know that I would want to share this on video, but if you read in that book, you're gonna see a chapter that says the most devastating abuse. And when I got help with that most devastating abuse, I was clinically depressed before then. When I got married, I was supposed to be taking Prozac. I wouldn't, because I'm just not a pill taker. But I was supposed to be taking Prozac, but I wouldn't take them. And I was quote, clinically depressed. Okay? Why shouldn't I have been? When I finally got help with that most devastating abuse, and God put me in the circumstance, I went to a Christian psychologist who helped me understand that, and helped me understand what I needed to fix, and helped me understand how to fix it. Once that happened, I was still depressed. And you know when I stopped being depressed? When I decided to stop being depressed. Now, am I saying that anybody can decide to not be mad at God, or anybody can decide not to be depressed? No, I'm telling you that once I had taken care of the things that needed to be taken care of, and God led me to those things, He helped me understand those things. I'm a landscaper. When I prepare a yard for sod, I'll rake it out smooth, and if it rains before I get there with the sod, I got more rocks to rake out. Well, that's the way my life was. I'd get everything smoothed out, and the rains would come and expose more rocks. I'd have to get them out of the way, and then the rains would come and expose more. And that was just God filtering through all that mess so I could get to the real problem. And once I got to the real problem, I was strong enough to decide not to be depressed, because I realized it was a spiritual battle, and Jesus had already won that for me. He'd already gotten victory over that. I just needed to jump on. One of the most cathartic things that has happened in my adult life is when I quit worrying about do's and don'ts and started just acting the way God wanted me to, just because I appreciated Him so much. And when a person gets to that point, see, I heard Pastor Jimmy use the term "kill our wounded" recently. Oh man, that struck a nerve with me. I got a book there. Because I also heard him tell a story about an emperor that was so concerned about us Christians because we loved people so well that we were drawing people to us. And now we're trying to draw people to us by killing our wounded. And if we can just be real with ourselves and real with others and get to the point where we're really acting, we're really self-governing. We don't make decisions based on how it's going to look or who we're going to fool, because we're not fooling anybody. If we'll just be real. See, once I got to that point where, one of my biggest challenges when I became a Christian was I didn't fit in with the partiers, and I didn't fit in with the Christians. So I was right where I was in my childhood. I was all by myself again. I didn't fit in with them. I didn't fit in with them. One of the reasons I didn't fit in with them because I've been doing most of the stuff that the Christians, most of the stuff that they were telling me I shouldn't be doing all my life. Now I'd learned something else. I didn't fit in with them anymore because I didn't want to keep doing those things. I was lost. Again. in a sense. If I had just gotten to the point where I am now, where I could just say, I want to do this because I appreciate what you did for me, God. He doesn't owe me anything. He didn't owe me Jesus. And when we get to the point where, and I would challenge everybody to get to the point where they say, hey, it's not about me. There's nothing I can do. Jesus saved me. It's all Him. I'm just acting because I'm just doing these things because I appreciate what He did so much. Thank you, God. Not because somebody's going to notice me, or not because somebody's going to pay me some attention, or not because I'm afraid you're going to hurt me. I'm doing this because I love you. And I would challenge people to find that place. Find that place where you can say, I can just be me because I ain't got to be a fool anymore. I'm just doing things because I appreciate what God did for me through Jesus.